before we get started, I just want to say that unfortunately still under the weather at the moment, but hopefully we'll be back to my usual self. However, the show must go on, and it's that time of year of financials, and we have today some from EA, who reported a rather good Q3 2017 fiscal result for the period ending December 31st, 2016. Yes, fiscal years are weird. And attributed their success to their digital services, Battlefield 1 and FIFA 17. Now, before I get stuck into the dry financials, which there isn't a huge amount of to be fair, they did look a fair amount to the future. And there's a name here that I think might interest you the most, which is, of course, none other than Bioware. Apparently, they have a new action title in the works, which apparently will quote-unquote disrupt the action genre, and apparently it's going to change the way we play an action title. What that means, hard to say. Fortunately, not coming out this year. It's slated for release sometime around the end of Q4 2018, which thankfully isn't the holiday, it's actually March the 31st, 2018, so we can probably expect this IP, whatever it is, to come out at the end of March. And this probably means that we can expect a reveal at E3. According to the CEO Andrew Wilson, the game is a wholly owned new IP. And he said, quote, "It's an action-adventure title, not an RPG, and called it a genre-melding game." He did say, however, we can expect the usual character customization and storyline progression that we've become used to when it comes to Bioware. Apparently it's going to have a, quote, "new universe of new characters, stories, and gameplay." Now, to be honest, I'm pretty happy about this. I enjoy Bioware's games very much, like many other people out there, but it's actually pretty nice to see them kind of going outside their comfort zone a little and going into the action genre. Now, of course, plenty of their games have had action elements. They've not been like pure RPGs in the usual sense. Of course, they have been RPGs, pretty long and hefty RPGs, but they have had action elements in terms of the gameplay, combat, and so on. So they've kind of dabbled with that, but they've never gone whole hog, I would say. So to see them go into that zone, to go outside of their comfort zone, is definitely going to be very interesting. Now, can we expect a full reveal at E3? Tough to say. I mean, obviously, when we finally got a confirmation trailer thing from Mass Effect Andromeda, it was, of course, just like a tiny little teaser until their sort of dedicated thing that they did shortly after that. However, this is a new IP. They need to tell us what it is, who are the characters, what's the setting. And is it sci-fi? Is it something else? It's probably sci-fi, spoiler alert. But, you know, I could be wrong, just saying. So you get my point, they need to tell us a bit more, whereas with Mass Effect, you know, a lot of it is kind of already known or assumed by the player, because, well, it's Mass Effect, it carries with it the legacy of the franchise. So we can probably expect a slightly longer trailer at E3, but of course that's purely speculation on my part. Now, they did say that a new Need for Speed is also in the works, and is expected to be coming out sometime in, or sometimes before, should I say, March 2018. Now, they also said, however, that they are working on a new Star Wars Battlefront, which you already knew, but they kind of reiterated that it's going to be bigger, it's going to have more heroes, and of course a single-player campaign, which will hopefully increase the value proposition, because for me, that was never too brilliant for Star Wars Battlefront. Of course, I'm sure many of you will disagree, but, you know, it's being worked on, apparently, by Dice Motive and Criterion, and we've already reported this, but just kind of reiterating it. So let's move on to the financials, shall we? Now, as I said, they attributed a lot of the success to Battlefield 1, and apparently it had the biggest launch of a Battlefield game ever. And EA said the player base was 50% larger than that of Battlefield 4 during the same launch quarter. Now, you might be wondering, well, what about Titanfall 2? You know, there's a lot of concern surrounding that game, given that it didn't do brilliantly, mostly due to the release date. What on earth are they thinking? But it seems like, even though the sales were below expectations, EA doesn't actually see it as an underperformance, so don't write it off just yet. And Andrew Wilson said, quote, "We're not seeing it as an underperformance at this juncture. What we have demonstrated as an organisation is that with great games we can sell them for many months and often many years. So the way we think about Titanfall is that what we have is one of the best games of this year, and certainly one of the best games in this generation of consoles. And we've got a development team who have unbelievable pedigree and a commitment to continue to support the community, and we expect to continue to grow that community through the coming fiscal year." However, moving on to raw sales, digital sales were quite impressive at 2.86 billion, which actually represents a rather nice 60% of their total net sales, and is also up 18% year over year. Now, DLC actually beat full game downloads to the largest contributor to digital purchases post, which is rather interesting and kind of shows you exactly why EA push DLC as much as they do. Net revenue, however, was also up to 1.4 billion from 1.07 billion year over year, which is actually an increase of 7.4 billion. 7.4%, sorry, not billion. And lastly, to close off on Mass Effect Andromeda, they did say that they expect the game to sell roughly 3 million units in the first week. Whether or not this is true, only time will tell. To be honest, the most interesting part of all this is this new IP from Bioware. I'm definitely excited to see what it is. Of course, we're going to have to wait until E3 most likely. It could even be even longer than that, but it's going to be interesting to see what it is and to see how it differentiates itself from their previous titles in terms of the gameplay, story, and so on. Regardless, I guess congrats to EA for a successful year. Despite the criticisms of Battlefield 1, it seems it did rather well for itself. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.